Where resistance ends, a Buddha reflection. I used to believe that peace would come when my mind finally became quiet, when difficult emotions stopped appearing, when everything inside felt steady and controlled. But the more I tried to fix what I felt, the more restless I became. It was only when I stopped resisting, even for a moment, that I noticed something unexpected. The struggle was not coming from the emotion itself, but from the way I was holding it. And that is where something began to change. The feeling you avoid. There are moments when something small unsettles you, a sudden tightness in the chest, a quiet unease that does not fully explain itself. You might notice how quickly the mind moves to distract, to replace the feeling with thought, with activity, with anything that restores a sense of control. And yet, beneath that movement, something remains unfinished. If you stay with it, even for a breath longer than usual, you begin to see something simple. The discomfort is not the real disturbance. It is the resistance to feeling it. In this way, the Buddha gently points not toward the emotion, but toward the movement away from it. You begin to notice that what you call fear or sadness or tension is often less intense than the struggle against it. Like water pressed under the surface, the feeling does not disappear when pushed down. It gathers pressure, but when allowed, even quietly, it rises and passes on its own. In that small allowance, a different kind of strength begins to form. Letting the wave arrive. You may have learned, without realizing it, that emotions are problems to solve. That calm must be maintained, that discomfort signals something wrong. So when a strong feeling appears, the mind rushes in with urgency, trying to fix, analyze, or escape. But if you watch closely, there is another way of seeing. The Buddha observed that feelings move like waves. They rise, crest, and fall, not because you control them, but because that is their nature. When you stop interfering, something unexpected happens. The wave completes itself. It does not remain forever. Even anger, when not fed by thought, begins to dissolve. Even sadness, when not resisted, softens into something quieter. You begin to trust that the mind can hold experience without breaking. That trust does not come from control. It comes from seeing again and again that nothing stays as it is. A quiet teaching. What is allowed to arise without resistance also knows how to pass. This understanding does not arrive through belief. It comes through small moments of honesty. You sit with a feeling you once avoided. You notice its texture, its movement, its shifting edges. And instead of becoming overwhelmed, you discover space within it. The Buddha's way is not to remove emotion, but to reveal its nature. Like watching clouds pass through an open sky, you begin to see that the sky is not harmed by what moves within it. And slowly, the mind stops fearing itself. The safety within experience. There is a subtle shift that begins when emotions are no longer treated as threats. The mind becomes a place where experience can happen safely. Not because everything feels pleasant, but because nothing needs to be pushed away. You may notice that feelings you once feared lose their sharpness when fully felt. They are still real, still present, but no longer overwhelming. The Buddha pointed toward this kind of safety, not built from control, but from understanding. Like sitting beneath a tree during changing weather, you remain while conditions move. Rain falls, wind passes, sunlight returns. The tree does not resist the weather. It allows, and in that allowing, it endures. In the same way, you begin to endure not by hardening, but by opening. when joy is not held. It is not only difficult emotions that create tension. Even joy, when grasped tightly, becomes fragile. You may notice how the mind tries to hold on to pleasant moments, fearing their end. But the Buddha observed that clinging to joy creates the same strain as resisting pain. In both cases, the mind moves away from the natural flow of experience. When joy is allowed without grasping, it becomes lighter. It can be enjoyed fully without the quiet fear of losing it. Like a breeze that passes through an open window, it is felt more deeply when not trapped. In this way, both pleasure and pain begin to move more freely, and the heart becomes less burdened by both. Insight and Awareness Quiz. After you have listened, open the quiz tab. The questions reveal how you interpreted what you heard and invite you to notice the hidden logic in your reactions. Then, share your score in the comments. A deeper pattern appears. Where there is holding, there is tension. Where there is seeing, there is release. As you begin allowing emotions to move without resistance, another layer reveals itself. You notice that certain feelings arise more strongly in specific situations. Not just because of the event, but because something deeper feels challenged. The Buddha saw that much of human suffering does not come from what happens, but from what is threatened within. A quiet image of who you believe you are begins to shape your reactions. When that image is confirmed, there is ease. When it is challenged, there is discomfort. This pattern moves quietly beneath daily life, often unnoticed, yet deeply influential. The image you carry. You may not speak it aloud, but there is a sense of who you believe yourself to be. Someone capable, someone kind, someone respected. These are not problems in themselves. But when held tightly, they begin to shape how you experience the world. A small mistake feels larger when it touches the idea of being competent. A moment of anger feels confusing when it clashes with the image of always being calm. The Buddha did not ask you to remove these identities. He simply invited you to see them clearly. To notice that they are formed, shaped by memory, experience, and expectation. Like reflections on water, they appear solid until the surface begins to move. When identity tightens. There are moments when life does not match the image you carry. Plans change. People respond differently than expected. Outcomes fall outside your control. In these moments, the discomfort is not only about what happened. It is about what it means for who you believe yourself to be. The Buddha's insight gently reveals that identity, when held rigidly, creates conflict with change. Life moves, but the mind tries to remain fixed. Like holding a shape in flowing water, the effort itself creates tension. But when the grip softens, the water continues and the strain disappears. A subtle realization. What you defend as self is often only a passing arrangement. This is not something to accept immediately. It is something to observe. You notice how identity shifts over time. The person you were years ago is not the same as now. Roles change, beliefs evolve, experiences reshape you. And yet, the mind still tries to hold a fixed version of self. When this is seen clearly, something loosens. You begin to relate to identity as something flexible, useful but not absolute, present but not permanent. And in that flexibility, there is room to breathe. The freedom of not defending. When identity becomes lighter, reactions soften. Criticism no longer feels like a direct attack. Mistakes become information rather than threats. You begin to listen more openly, to respond rather than defend. The Buddha pointed toward this freedom, where the need to protect a fixed self-image begins to fade. Like removing armor that is no longer needed, there is a sense of relief. You are still present, still engaged, but no longer guarded in the same way. And in that openness, learning becomes easier. The quiet conflict with reality. Even as identity softens, another habit remains. The mind continues to argue with what has already happened. You may notice thoughts that begin softly. This should not have happened. It could have been different. These thoughts feel natural, but they carry a hidden tension. The Buddha observed that this inner debate is a subtle source of suffering. Not because the event was easy, but because the mind refuses to let it be as it is. Like replaying a moment again and again, the past continues inside the present. A gentle ending of argument. Peace begins where resistance to what has already occurred comes to rest. Acceptance does not mean approval. It does not mean you agree with everything that happens. It simply means recognizing that something has already taken place. When this recognition appears, the argument ends. The mind no longer tries to rewrite what cannot be changed. Like setting down a weight you did not realize you were carrying, there is an immediate lightness. Not because the past disappears, but because the struggle with it does. The stories around events. As the mind becomes quieter, you begin to notice something else. Events themselves are often simple, but the stories around them become complex. A short message becomes a sign of rejection. A delay becomes failure. A silence becomes meaning. The Buddha's way of seeing gently separates these layers. There is what happened, and there is what the mind adds to it. Like watching shadows form at sunset. You begin to see how easily shapes are created from light and perspective. Returning to what is seen. When you pause and return to the raw experience, something changes. The event becomes smaller. The emotional intensity begins to soften. You realize that much of what you felt came not from the moment itself, but from the meaning placed upon it. The Buddha invites this kind of seeing. Not to remove thought, but to understand it. To recognize that not every story needs to be believed. And in that recognition, the mind becomes more spacious, more patient, more at ease with uncertainty. The quiet ease of understanding. When nothing is held too tightly, everything can be experienced fully. At the end of this movement, nothing dramatic has been forced to change. Emotions still arise, life still moves with its unpredictability, thoughts still appear. But something fundamental has shifted. You are no longer in conflict with these experiences. Feelings come and go, like weather across an open sky. Identity adjusts, like a reflection on moving water. The past remains, but without argument. Stories arise, but are seen as stories. And in this quiet clarity, a deeper ease begins to settle. Not the ease of controlling life, but the ease of moving with it. A calm that does not depend on conditions. A freedom that comes not from escape, but from understanding. And in that understanding, the path becomes simple. Not always easy, but clear. Each moment offering itself just as it is, waiting only to be seen. This is Buddha Reflections, where philosophy, insight, and lived experience meet to explore mind, impermanence, and release. The conversation doesn't end here. Visit the quiz tab and share your score in the comments. Thanks for your time. It's been a delight. What should we explore next? Comment, share, and save your insight. Subscribe to Orbital Dharma and keep your thoughts bright.